This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
They come to the 8th ball, and California Chrome is absolutely sensational. California Chrome shines bright in the Kentucky Derby.
Will take charges surging, and it's a photo finish. It's too close to call.
African Story wins the Dubai World Cup.
Macho Man!
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Coming up a little later on, as it is Belmont, post-Belmont week, we will continue our conversation. As always, Jeremy Plonk, HorsePlayerNow.com, Night School Countdown to the Crown. We have been talking Triple Crown with him all season long, and we'll wrap it up taking a look at the Belmont Stakes, obviously, and some of the other three-year-old races on that Belmont Stakes card. We'll also, now he shifts gears. His Countdown to the Crown has become, over the last few weeks, Countdown to the Plate, Queen's Plate, and so we'll talk a little Queen's Plate action too right at the end, as there was a race up at Woodbine on Sunday that might have some Queen's Plate implications. So we'll cover all of that with Jeremy a little bit later on. Bill Downs, the track announcer at Indiana Grand, with Indiana Grand racing on this Wednesday afternoon. We'll get some of his thoughts on their racing for today. Also pick his brain maybe a little bit on the Belmont Stakes. Speaking of the Belmont Stakes, I mentioned this the other day. I just wanted to read the quote, which I thought was pretty good. This came out, I think, well, actually, it came out Saturday night. Probably didn't appear in the Baltimore Sun until Sunday, but Peter Schmuck, one of the writers for the Baltimore Sun, he stated it very well after the rant by Steve Coburn on Saturday, right after the Belmont Stakes. Peter Schmuck wrote, California Chrome co-owner Steve Coburn spent the past 5 weeks captivating America with his folksy charm and a shoot-from-the-hip style that seemed refreshing until he shot himself in the foot on Saturday. Perfectly put. But again, we you know, you tip your cap to Steve Coburn for coming out with the apology on Good Morning America eventually. He took a couple of days too long. There are still plenty of conversations online. You can catch them. I've linked to many of them on Equidaily. Well, did Coburn bring up a good point? Should the Triple Crown be tweaked? And there are pros and cons from people who agree or disagree with Coburn, and just general comments about what Coburn said. And some folks have made the comment, and I suppose I can't disagree with it really. Coburn's rant did keep horse racing in the news for another couple of days. I know a lot of sports radio talk shows, beginning of the week, we're still talking horse racing, specifically to mention Steve Coburn and his rant. So it did take away a little of the luster, I think, from Tonalist and his camp. But, you know, maybe there was some positive to come out of it. Maybe you can find a silver lining there. There was a positive, though, again, with the Belmont Stakes. We'll hit on some numbers. We talked yesterday. Television ratings were good. Handle was very good, jumping up significantly from previous years. But TV numbers were even better than expected. According to the folks at Nielsen, the Belmont last week was the most watched event on television, and that includes prime time. This was an afternoon event, but the 20.6 million people that tuned in to see the Belmont Stakes outstripped everything all week long. It's unusual, A, when a program not in prime time, and B, a program on a Saturday, because Saturday is typically low viewership, winds up being a significant player. But they weren't only significant. The Belmont Stakes was the most watched program last week. And don't forget, last week, among primetime shows, there were a couple of NBA finals. We also had the Tony Awards, Miss USA over on HBO, Game of Thrones, plenty of popular programming out there. But the Belmont Stakes, the top viewed program of the week. So another piece of good news for horse racing, and just again shows Triple Crown. Talk about saving the sport. I've said before, it's not about saving the sport, it's about raising awareness, and clearly that happened. Coming from an NBC press release, They noted that the 2014 Belmont Stakes was the most watched weekend sporting event since their primetime telecast from the Winter Olympics at Sochi. So that's interesting, because Olympics prime time, obviously you expect big numbers there, but the Belmont Stakes ranking right up there is just behind that one. They also noted that Belmont, this is interesting, this goes to show you what a Triple Crown attempt means. Belmont viewership and rating increased 194% and 167% compared to last year's race with Palace Malice. So clearly, with a Triple Crown on the line, there is vastly increased interest in viewership. Belmont Stakes ratings in 53 of the 56 metered markets went up as compared to the last Triple Crown attempt. And now NBC Sports has a social media and an online presence as well, and fans live streamed over 6 million, really just under 7 million minutes of Belmont Stakes coverage online. So some interesting numbers there. And I also found it interesting, they broke it down into the top 10 markets for Belmont viewership. And our friends out of Buffalo, who have done so well with viewership throughout the Triple Crown, Buffalo ranked number 8 as far as Belmont Stakes viewership in metered markets around the country. Number 1 was Louisville. Obviously, they also rank highly and have throughout the Triple Crown. Fort Myers in Florida has been on the list as well. So it's kind of funny. You see Baltimore, obviously, with the Preakness being there, you can see their interest. They were number 5 as far as watching the Belmont Stakes. But Buffalo and Fort Myers, to me, are kind of interesting as names that, as I say, have appeared during the Triple Crown as among the top markets watching the television broadcast. And hats off to the folks out in Buffalo and down in Fort Myers. They're clearly racing fans. As mentioned, there is continued talk about tweaking the Triple Crown, sparked by the Coburn rant a little bit. I talked about it earlier on the Handicappers Report, and I believe yesterday. I'm surprised Christine Brennan in USA Today, and you can still find her article linked on Equidaily. Besides the article, she also had a little video on the USA Today website, which essentially said the same thing. She just said it live on video, where she claims, gee, Steve Coburn has a point. Why do the horses that skip the Derby or the Preakness get to run in the Belmont Stakes? Her consideration is, you should only be able to run in the Belmont if you've run in the Kentucky Derby and Preakness. That, to me, totally absurd idea. I've read it a number of times this week, typically from more mainstream sports columnists who clearly don't understand the sport. If you go back, I read yesterday the Mike Lupica stats. I read them again this morning on the Handicappers Report, that actually the number of horses showing up in the Belmont, skipping the earlier races, percentage-wise has gone down in recent years. If you look back at past Triple Crown winners, I brought up Affirm, Seattle Sioux, and Secretariat yesterday. They were facing each in their race one horse whose previous race was the Preakness. They were facing shorter fields, however, and that was a little bit different. They all had shorter fields than California Chrome faced. But I wanted to bring up a stat that I found very interesting that came from the Frank Angst column in the Blood Horse from last week, column called Waiting and Waiting for Crowning Glory. If you haven't read it, it's a very nice long-form piece, again, done by Frank Angst in the Blood Horse last week. But just to illustrate how tough it is to win a Triple Crown, Frank Angst in that piece brought up a great statistic. Since 1973, only 6 horses at any point in their career have won 3 consecutive Grade 1 races longer than 1 1/8 miles on dirt. Ali Sheba, Easy Goer, and Gentleman. They did it later in their career, but also the 3 Triple Crown winners, Secretariat, Seattle Slew, and Affirm. So since 1963, only 6 horses have been able to string together 3 Grade 1 races going 1 1/8 miles or longer on dirt, including the 3 Triple Crown winners, obviously. So it is not an easy thing to achieve. That it didn't happen again this year, looking at stats like this, is completely understandable. To really come off of that and think, oh, we should start to tinker with things and change the rules and whatnot. I've said before, I'm kind of ambivalent on maybe lengthening the dates, but I tend to tilt more towards the traditional side of things. And, you know, you read stats like that and you see it's a tough thing to do. And as Anthony and Mormino and I were talking on the Handicappers Report, lengthening the dates might actually make it tougher. So we'll see how things shake out over the next couple of months and how the conversation proceeds within the racing industry. But it's been interesting to read for the last couple of days. Going to head into the commercial break right now. Jeremy Plonk coming out of the break. We'll talk, obviously, the weekend stakes at Belmont and more. But one of the stakes this weekend that we didn't want to float under the radar, I've mentioned it already this week, the Epsom Derby over in England. We're going to take a look at the entire race as we go into the commercial break because it is going to be won by Australia, an Aidan O'Brien winner. Australia came out of this race. The BHA, British Horse Racing Authority, rated the horse number-wise the same as See the Stars, and I think we remember See the Stars as a very good horse of just a few years ago. Aidan O'Brien is hinting that Australia may be one of the best horses he's trained. Australia came into this race with a record of 4 starts, a couple of wins, a second and a third. He had run third just previous to the race we're about to see, the Epsom Derby. He had run third in the 2000 Guineas, just missed by half a length. Had a couple of wins prior to that, going back to his 2-year-old season, and had finished second by a smidge in his career debut last June. So this is an up-and-comer. We're going to watch him win the Epsom Derby. You can look for purple cap, purple and white silks, purple and white striped sleeves, and watch a very, very powerful and sustained stretch run. You can see Australia coming on the outside in that purple. But I will note, Kingston Hill will run second and run a very good race himself. Kingston Hill came into this race with 3 wins in 4 starts. He was absolutely a dud in the 2000 Guineas, running 8th, but had a 3-for-3 record prior to that and validated that earlier record with a gutsy second-place finish to Australia. Kingston Hill will be in light blue with the dark blue hoop sleeves and cap, and you'll see him dueling down the lane with Australia. So as we go to the break, we're going to watch this past Saturday's Epsom Derby from England. Australia, who is now promising to be a very, very good runner for the top trainer over there, Aidan O'Brien. 1.5 miles on the turf is the Epsom Derby. We're going to watch that going into the break. When we come out of the break, Jeremy Plonk talking some Belmont Stakes action. All of that right after this.
And they're off and racing. They stride away in the Investec Derby, and our channel is the first one to show. Kingfisher is also showing speed, and in the early stages, Romsdale adopts a handy position. Australia's not too far behind the speed early on. Kingston Hill also being sent forward. Kieran Fallon pushing True Story up on the inside, trying to get a position from that inside gate, smooth through into about 7th, just ahead of Ebanoran, who races alongside A-Rod. Australia is now just being taken back to sit in midfield. Pinzolo comes next, just ahead of Jeffrey Chaucer as they continue to climb the hill. The pace is no more than a steady one at this stage. Pinzolo's quite well back. Impulsive Moment well back with Orchestra towards the tail. Red Galileo is another who is towards the back of the field. So our channel it is who's cutting out the running in the Derby from Kingfisher in the white cap. The grey Kingston Hill is poised in 3rd place with True Story, who got as close as 4th, disputing that position with Sutton Wonder and Romsdale, who's a little bit wider out on the racecourse. Ebanoran tracks those in 7th on the outside of A-Rod, who's found the rail. Australia still just about midfield. The purple jacket and cap on the outside of him is Fascinating Rock at this stage as they prepare now to begin the swing left-handed. Impulsive Moment and Western Him are quite well back in the field, with Jeffrey Chaucer also well back, and Red Galileo continues to be the back halfer, just preceded by Orchestra. But it's a steady pace being dictated here by Silvestre de Souza on our channel. Kingfisher is yet to press him in 2nd place as they begin now to move down the hill. They now beginning just to increase the effort, and now back in 3rd place Kingston Hill. In 4th, the blue jacket of True Story. Story. Then Romsdale, Evanoran races next. Australia getting closer down the outside. Behind these towards the inside, Aaron is also beginning to improve, and Aaron is being followed through by Western Him. Then Fascinating Rock, Jeffrey Chaucer. Sudden Wonders lost a little bit of ground. It's Our Channel pressed by Kingfisher, who've extended away, passing the 3. Kingston Hill, best place of the Principals. In third place, Australia coming down the centre. Then True Story, Arrowhead comes next. Behind these, Romsdale and Evanoran as they make their way now up the home straight. And it's Australia who moves through with Kingston Hill. These 3 forge on in the Investec Derby. They go away. Aaron has moved through to dispute third place with Romsdale. Then Evanoran. They race now down with a furlong to go. It's Australia who is out in front. Kingston Hill in second place. And it is Australia forging clear by a length or so. Kingston Hill is trying to rally. It was written in the stars. A day of destiny. And Australia follows in her parents' footsteps and wins an Epsom Classic. In second was Kingston Hill, Romsdale was third, a massive run, Red Galileo and Aaron racing fourth and fifth, Western Hit was next, a Fascinating Rock in seventh.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the King of the Hill on June 14th. So sign up today, online at CapitalOTB.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
Using CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Simply log on with your username and password from the homepage. 2. Fund your Capital OTB account through our Easy Money, Green Dot, or Visa MasterCard options. And 3. Place your bet on one of our 3 easy-to-navigate wagering platforms, Capital Bet TV, Capital Bet Express, or Capital Bet Pro. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Wednesday morning means a visit from Jeremy Plonk, HorsePlayerNow.com, Countdown to the Crown, Night School. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. That's a lot of stuff on the business card.
And I didn't mention you were down at Belmont Park on Saturday working with NBC. That's one of your other hats as well, and you do a great job there handing out the notes and whatnot. Jeremy, before we move on to talk a little bit about Belmont, always like to go back and review Night School from Tuesday. And Night School this week, you changed things up a little bit.
Yeah, we went to our first ever summer semester. We broke the season into 3 semesters this year, spring, summer, and fall. And while we have the radio simulcast with Steve Bick and the SiriusXM gang in the spring and the fall, we want to change it up a little bit in the summer and get into some live teaching and live chat mode. So we're taking the live races from Mountaineer from 8:30 till the end of the card on Tuesday nights, and we're teaching the fans a different lesson about live racing every week. So last night we took a Newbie Tuesday twist where we explained a lot of the terms to let folks ask questions about items in the past performances and what we were seeing on the feed, because we know a lot of newcomers come to racing right after the Triple Crown. There'll be a different topic over the next 12 weeks of the summer in Night School every Tuesday at 8:30. We'll follow the live races. You get free Brisk past performances, free live streaming video from the Mountaineer website linked into our chat. And we play the races with you in real time and kind of explain things to you, what's going on. There were simple questions like, what does an F with a circle around it mean in the conditions of the race? And that was fillies, you know. And for a lot of us, we think that that's, something that's obvious. But to newcomers, we were able to answer hundreds of questions last night along those lines, so it was great to move forward with that. This coming Tuesday, when we get back to it, we're going to discuss money management. We'll get into more serious and more in-depth topics and show you how we balance our budget through a card next week. As Brian W. Spencer, the track handicapper at Fairgrounds and one of my cohorts, a horse player now, will be our guest next week, helping me along with that in night school. So should be a good one. We talk money management in real time, and we'll see how far we can stretch our dollar.
Yeah, we had Brian with us all throughout the Fairgrounds season, so he'll be a great guest. And it sounds like a fun summer, watching some live racing, being able to interact with people as the evening goes along. That's a great idea, and I certainly recommend it to folks to jump on board. Because when you're sitting in your living room, you don't get that interaction that's part of really the fun of the game. And so with the technology now, hop on the night school platform on Tuesdays, and you'll be able to do that through the summer. Jeremy, before we get to the actual races, just want to touch on, and we were talking during the break, obviously you were with NBC, so there was a lot of running around and working, but I'm assuming you got a little bit of the atmosphere. What were your thoughts of the crowd at Belmont, certainly the weather and the overall day of racing? And did you read, I brought it up at the top of the show, this is amazing. Obviously, the overnight numbers for television were solid, but the Nielsen people have now put it out that the Belmont was the most watched program last week, and that includes prime time. So I think overall, boy, Triple Crown on the line, it was a special day.
Yeah, it was similar to what we saw when Smarty Jones went for the Triple Crown. That was the most watched program on television that week in 2004, and this was the most watched horse race since that day. The third largest attended Belmont, behind Funny Side and the unbelievable 120,000 we saw with Smarty Jones. I'm a Pennsylvania guy, and I know I'm going to come at this a little bit biased, but there will never be another Smarty Jones in terms of public interest leading up to. California Chrome was awfully darn popular, but he wasn't on the cover of Sports Illustrated and the social magazines before running in the Belmont Stakes. He would have been after if he had won the Triple Crown. I mean, there was just something different about that vibe with Smarty Jones, that he just connected with everybody. California Chrome connected with 90% of the people, and that's why you saw an amazing crowd out there. I thought it was a fantastic day of racing. What Belmont was able to put together on the card, hats off to their staff. They've been complimented a lot on that, and I think deservedly so. I'll honestly tell you, Seth, one of my fondest memories of this Belmont day is going to be the LL Cool J concert before the Belmont Stakes. I thought it was absolutely off the chain and great. I'm 42 years old, so I'm kind of in that middle. I'm not one of the young kids, and I'm not one of the older folks who would be turned off by that. When LL Cool J was cranking out hits like he played on Saturday, those were when I was like a teenager. So it kind of rung a bell with me. And if you're trying to recruit new fans to horse racing, I've always said, don't go after the 20-somethings because they don't have the time, the money, or the interest. The 40-somethings are where it's at. And for folks like that, a guy like LL Cool J really connects because he's from my age bracket from when I was younger. And I thought it was fantastic. The way he got the crowd on the feet, and it was just enough. It was 7 or 8 minutes long, and he was out of there. You wouldn't want a concert like that for a half hour or 40 minutes, but I thought they made all the right moves in putting things together. Now, as far as the train station and trying to get out of there and everything, I know there's a lot of folks who were complaining about that. But, our NBC talent trailers were set up right there underneath the Long Island Railroad station right there. And there was a concert stage put right at the train station playing a show until about 10 o'clock at night. So there was a concert to entertain people who were waiting on the trains. I really thought that they did about as much as you could do to handle a crowd like that. And I think they did a great job on it.
Yeah, it was a fun day. I've talked about, we were stuck in the the parking lot for a little longer than I would have liked. I think they could have, there has to be big event parking consultants out there because our lot just didn't have any lanes or anything. But part of it was also the local police, because when you got out to the street, 4 lanes went down into 1, so that played into it as well. So it was some of that was beyond NYRA's control. But all of that doesn't take away from just a spectacular day of racing, and again a great story leading into the Triple Crown this year and whatnot. Steve Coburn maybe put a little damper on things, but I think I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt now that he's had the mea culpa. Took a couple days too long, but there was the argument also that maybe that kept racing in the news news even a little more, so maybe there was a silver lining there. But let's talk a little bit about the racing. All season long we've had you on, we've talked Triple Crown. There was a Triple Crown on the line this year. We're going to pick up the Belmont and watch it while we talk, coming right out of the gate. And again, we're going to see number 11, Tonalist, win. Number 6, Commissioner will run second. Number 1, Metal Count third. And Dead Heating for fourth, California Chrome and Wicked Strong. There were some comments after the race. I understand, I have not watched the broadcast yet. I have it taped, but I understand Randy Moss and Jerry Bailey had some disagreement over Victor Espinosa's ride. And the pundits over the last couple of days, as I've been keeping track on Equidaily, I'd say it was about 50-50. Some folks critical of Espinosa, Andy Beyer main among them, but other folks defending Espinosa's ride. But that was certainly a topic of conversation. About mid-stretch, I thought California Chrome was right there and stood a good chance, and then he just kind of went flat for the remainder of the race. It does wind up to be Tonalist. Give us some of your thoughts on the Belmont.
Well, it's fair to debate all of that strategy and what could have been and how it should have played out as if it was a video game and those sort of things like that. But then when you find out, 6, 8, 10 hours later with Barbara Livingston's photos that he got stepped on by Commissioner, which you really can't see in the video that well, but he obviously had a big part of his foot ripped off in the back. And so if the horse was not comfortable and wasn't giving Victor the kind of energy that he has in the past, which Victor said he couldn't get up into those spots where he wanted to be, then you just have to say it had something to do with the horse's performance. I mean, I wish, for the sake of clarity and how we always want to define things in life, we want yes and no answers. We don't want maybes. I wish the horse never would have been stepped on. Then you could look at it and say, maybe he was tired. You could look at it and say maybe the pedigree caught up with him in the mile and a half. You could say maybe Victor didn't put him in a good spot. But that injury to his foot, even if minor, and getting beat a length and 3/4, is enough to just cloud every one of those single arguments. I mean, it's significant. Horses win grabbing quarters. I understand that, but some don't. And so I don't know what to make of the result concretely. Because of that, I wish that Matterhorn hadn't broke in and stepped on him, because I think we would have a much fairer view of everything. From Coburn wasn't privy to any of that when he went on his rant about they beat me because my horse was tired. He had no idea that the horse even got stepped on when he went crazy with his comments. So it is so difficult. That grabbed quarter is the one thing that we're going to go back to. It's the safety pin for a spectacular bid. I mean, 30 years from now, we're going to be talking about spectacular bid. Would have won the Triple Crown if he didn't step on a safety pin. 30 years from now, we're going to say that this horse may have won the Triple Crown if he wasn't stepped on. The emotion's raw right now, and I know Randy and Jerry did not have, obviously, that information in front of them, and they're thinking that, stylistically, Victor chose to be in that particular spot, but that's not really the way it played out. So while it's tough to do things on live television, whether you're the host and the analyst or you're the person being interviewed, as Coburn proved, it's tough to do things in real time. Time allows us to analyze everything a little bit better. But in this case, we will never know. We don't get a redo on the Belmont.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. The analogy between this and the safety pin is a very good point. And again, about mid-stretch, he looked absolutely live to me and looked like he was going to get it done and just flattened out a little bit. But all of that said, Tonalist, I think, is an up-and-comer, certainly a player in the 3-year-old division. I think we all thought that going back to earlier in the career, and he validated it. So, I think he gets overshadowed a little bit by the loss of the Triple Crown and California Chrome, and certainly Steve Coburn right after the race. But you have to tip your cap to Christophe Clement and the connections, and Tonalist will be a 3-year-old we'll have to watch the remainder of the year.
No doubt. And these horses who play the role of spoiler do fall in through the cracks in respect. I mean, Touch Gold didn't get the respect, after beating Silver Charm until, a little bit further down the road. Victory Gallop, okay, he finally got by, but he ended up being a champion 4-year-old then, So, these horses who kind of break our hearts. Birdstone, it was a fluke that he beat Smarty Jones until he came back and won the Trapper, So these horses have a chance to prove themselves. Are you going to be Birdstone and go on to win the Trappers, or are you going to be Sarava and never heard from again? So I think Tonalist is more in that camp of a horse who's got a big future in front of him. One of the most lightly raced Belmont Stakes winners of all time with only 5 career starts. plenty of upside. Had he not had the lung infection, he probably wins the Wood Memorial, and he would have been in the Kentucky Derby. Imagine this. If he doesn't have the lung infection, he goes in the Wood. He wins the Wood Memorial. Strong doesn't. Jimmy Jerkins is not traveling to Kentucky with Wicked Strong off a loss in the Wood. So he's the horse who's waiting for the Belmont to run it home. And he completely flips the roles with Tonalist, where Tonalist would have run in the Kentucky Derby, and then probably, sat things out for the Belmont. So he and Wicked Strong's path completely changed, more than likely, based on a lung infection in April. And so that's why one of these things, you say, well, the Triple Crown, you've got to run in all 3 races. That's horse hockey. I mean, I don't believe that whatsoever. The folks who are saying that are just completely misguided to me. It's like saying Tiger Woods with a back injury missed the Masters, so he can't play in the U.S. Open later in the year because it's part of golf's Grand Slam. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever to me. But, the deal with Tonalist is if he didn't have the lung infection, he probably runs in the Wood. And as good as he looked now, you can't imagine that he wouldn't have won the Wood.
Yeah, I'm with you. I talked earlier, Christine Brennan. I keep bringing up her name because she's a prominent sports writer, but she was one of the people who said, yeah, Steve Coburn is right. If you run in the Derby, that should be a preclusion to going on to the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. And I think those are mainstream sports people who just do not understand the sport. What about years when 2 different horses win the Derby and the Preakness? What does that leave for the Belmont? And she also said, what other sport does that? And as you alluded to, golf, but I brought up yesterday, what about the Grand Slam in tennis?
Well, yeah, exactly. There's a million sports that do that. And they let wild cards into the playoffs. You don't even win the American League East. You finish 10 games behind somebody, but you qualify through a wild card. The Florida Marlins won a couple World Series when they didn't even beat the Atlanta Braves for the division title. This happens in every sport. It's absolute garbage. It's people who, aren't even thinking. I mean, when Howard Stern is weighing in on whether or not we should have a horse mandated for the Triple Crown, you know that they're talking out both ears. One thing, Seth, I went back and looked at it. The only horse that Secretariat ran against in all 3 legs was Sham, and Affirm's only horse was Alydar. All the horses in the Belmont Stakes, those 2 years, the 2 greatest Triple Crown champions of modern times, they faced one horse in all 3 legs. I mean, California Chrome faced twice as many. Now, I'm not saying General A-Rod is Alydar. I'm not saying Right on Curlin is either. But when you just look at numbers, I mean, the argument makes no sense whatsoever. The greats of the past didn't face 7 or 8 horses in all 3 legs either. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and there have been some nice stats put out right along those lines over the past couple of days.
Mike Lupica, we talked about non-sports folks. Mike Lupica did a tremendous statistical column afterwards. And a tip of the cap to him, if you haven't read his deal in the New York papers, Google it online. I thought Lupica did the research and wrote a great piece, especially for somebody who's not a horse racing guy.
Yeah, and I had quoted Lupica's statistics earlier on the show. I agree. Yeah. He hit the nail right on the head. That whole notion is just goofy. But let's move on, talk about a couple of the other 3-year-old races from the weekend that I thought stood out. We've been talking 3-year-olds all year long. And really, to me, one of the more impressive performances on the card on Saturday was that Woody Stevens, the Grade 2, $500,000, 7 furlongs, the number 1 Bayern, just runs away and hides from this field in here. And certainly earlier in the year, this was a real player for the Baffert team, and then runs 9th in the Preakness. They come back, they shorten up, and as I say, he was just phenomenal on Saturday.
Well, you talk about how things could have changed. We forget. Bayern was the morning line favorite for the San Felipe, and he scratched with a foot bruise, not California Chrome. If this horse had that kind of effort in him and decimated California Chrome in the San Felipe, how the entire landscape of the spring would have changed. It's just this is such a great game, and that's what makes it fun and gets you excited, and your voice rises when you talk about it and you get into it, because there's so many twists and turns. It's not 162 games of a major league season. It's not a 7-game finals where the Spurs and the Heat can trade punches back and forth. This is one of those things where just little subtle differences. If he doesn't come down with that foot bruise, which obviously set him back, which sent him to Arkansas as a short horse, he didn't run that well in Arkansas. He came back in the Derby trial. Maybe that was pushed too quick because he went from the 2 weeks rest from the Arkansas Derby to the Derby trial, which was a strange placement of a race. Now he finally gets proper spacement, 4, 5, 6 weeks in between races, and he just fires the kind of race that Baffert and Stevens thought he had in him all along. Candy Boy, another reason why this horse wasn't in the Santa Anita Derby was, one, Baffert already had opportunity, and Candy Boy was going to be ridden by Gary Stevens, and they couldn't get Gary Stevens to ride Bayern for the Santa Anita Derby. So again, circumstances. Let's say Candy Boy's not in that race. He's sidelined by injury. Stevens is available. Baffert runs him in the Santa Anita Derby, and maybe he runs that kind of race against California Chrome, and we're not talking about him even as the Derby favorite going into Louisville. It's a wonderfully unique game that presents so many twists and turns. But I was talking to Josh Elliott, if I can get off just a little tangent real quick. The Josh Elliott, the Good Morning America host, who recently came to NBC and was working on our broadcast team this weekend. After the races, we're back at the trailers and everybody's having a drink and celebrate. And I said, I hope you had a good time with this because you really added something to the broadcast, and I think you have a great appeal to mainstream, viewers. And I said, I hope you enjoyed this and it wasn't just an assignment. He said, I cannot believe the stories that were in this year's Triple Crown. And I just laughed. I said, wait 6 months, wait 8 months. These stories happen every single year in horse racing. You're going to have great tales to tell every year. It's why Red Smith and all the great sports writers of all time love to cover horse racing, because the stories are phenomenal and the plot twists change every week. It's great.
Yeah, and we talked to Donna Barton Brothers, did an interview with her a few days before, and we were talking about the undercard for the Belmont Stakes Day, and she said, yeah, it's like Christmas. You go downstairs, you got a new car, and then you turn, and there are still more presents under the tree. And that's exactly what it was like. It was a great day. And Jeremy, let's touch on one other race. A 3-year-old race on the undercard, early in the card, ungraded, but there was $150,000 on the line in the Easy Goer, and I just wanted to show number 4, Kid Cruz, winning, just to show connections that I think made the right decision. I think they made the right pick with Kid Cruz, wins pretty easily, this ungraded Easy Goer, but this is a talented 3-year-old. They had the opportunity to go in the Belmont. After a dud in the Preakness, I think they made the right move here.
They did. Just like the folks that turned back in distance, Social Inclusion and Bayern and the Woody Stevens coming out of the Preakness, and they got in the right place distance-wise. Kid Cruz got in the right place class-wise. And this is what happens when good connections take a shot and then regroup. And I think that was a great example of solid placement by the owners and the trainers, of not being overzealous. They didn't push on with Bayern or Social Inclusion in these long-distance routes, and they didn't push on with Kid Cruz against the elite horses. They got him back in a listed stakes. This horse can make a lot of money this year in the right spots, Kid Cruz. There's a lot of races like the Long Branch at Monmouth. The Barbaro, I believe, is still run at Delaware Park. You've got races like the Iowa Derby where he would be, a solid horse. And so if they pick their spots right, Kid Cruz can make $500,000 this year pretty easily. Not easily, but he's got to work for it. But he can make. There's $500,000 on the table for that horse to earn this year. Well spotted.
And I just want to remind people again, Linda Rice also won a stake, the True North, on Friday with Palace. Palace and Kid Cruz. 2 claims, 2 very nice claims.
Yeah.
Hats off to them. And Jeremy, before we let you go, again, we've mentioned it the past few weeks, your Countdown to the Crown Friday package that folks can find at horseplayernow.com online. You've shifted your attention a little bit over the last few weeks. Countdown to the Queen's Plate. I wanted to bring up a race from last Sunday at Woodbine, an allowance event that may have some plate implications. We're going to watch the stretch drive here. They're going 1 1/8 miles, obviously, on the synthetic surface up at Woodbine. The winner will be Coltimus Prime, who is up in the top 5 of your current Queen's Plate top contenders list. Give us some thoughts on Coltimus Prime coming out of this Sunday race.
Well, he was very fortunate. I mean, the horse on the lead, who looked like he might be going on the victory, Athenian Guard, just kind of bolted to the inside, and Coltimus Prime was fortuitous in that regard. Kept coming. He's got a long distance pedigree and style, and I think he's one of the top players for the Queen's Plate. This was a good prep. It was a 9-furlong race to get him ready for the 10 furlongs for the Queen's Plate. It wasn't against the heaviest hitters that they'll face, so it was a well-spotted race. And a good job by Justin Nixon to get the right prep in them. They were lucky, I think, the way that it turned out. They might have been second in this race, if not for that situation in mid-stretch. But Coltimus Prime, definitely one to watch. I think Lemus Artie, who's working up in your neck of the woods at Saratoga the last couple of weeks, is training really strongly up there based on all accounts. And he's going to, make that trek over to Woodbine and be awfully tough. This weekend, if you're talking Queen's Plate, all the major final preps are this Sunday. The plate trial will be Sunday, and the Woodbine Oaks. A lot of fillies come out of the Oaks and then run in the Queen's Plate a month later. So that July 6th race, we're kind of looking at last call for the major preps this Sunday on a big day up at Woodbine. Horse Player Now, our team's going to be in Toronto this weekend. Brian Nadeau and Tom Kelly, part of our night school tour, are going to be teaching the fans at Mohawk for the North American Cup, the harness race on Saturday night. And then Brian's going to swing over to Woodbine and do a little work over there, a little recon work for our Queen's Plate fan education event, and he'll be there to help them analyze the Woodbine Oaks and also the plate trial.
Nice. And your countdown to the Queen's Plate package again comes out on Friday?
Yeah, we'll do it this Friday, and it'll be a big one. We'll have the 2 big race previews. We'll have a new top 20, and we'll get set. We'll dial it down towards the next classic in North America here. We've got 3 left in Canada in terms of the classics now that the U.S. is wrapped up.
Yeah, we didn't get a Triple Crown down here, but still live up there, so we'll see what happens as we're approaching Queen's Plate time. All right, Jeremy, as always, we appreciate the visit. Again, we'll remind people, summer semester of night school is kicked off next Tuesday. Log on for a live chat during some horse racing. Should be a lot of fun throughout the summer. Always appreciate the visit. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, have a great week, everybody.
Oh, I think we've lost Jeremy, but thanks to Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com. We'll take our next break. Downs of Indiana Grand Racing. Stay tuned.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Welcome back. We're joined now by Bill Downs from Indiana Grand Racing. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Happy to have you on board so folks can get some ideas for Indiana Grand this afternoon. And if they are going to play, what's your weather look like?
We've just received a whole bunch of rain. We were muddy yesterday, and we had some rain this morning, and I'm on the southern part of town right now and just got done with probably a good 45-minute shower, so I'm expecting an off-track again today.
All right, we'll keep that in mind as we progress along during the day. Let's take a look at a few races, get some opinions, and then at the end, we're asking everybody this week what they thought of the Belmont Stakes, but we'll kick things off with this afternoon's action. First at Indiana today is a calendar condition claimer for Indiana breds. These are $5,000 claimers. They are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. They're going to go 6 furlongs. Your thoughts in the first?
I like the 3 Liliandra for trainer Tim Gleishaw. Second off the long layoff, I like that, making a good drop down in class from a straight 8 into this condition calendar. $5,000 claiming race. You got to beat the 2. She's a Cozy Gal who Leandra lost to, finished about 3 lengths behind last time out. But the second race off the long layoff, I think that Liliandra, before that race was December of 2012 when she last raced. I think that we see some improvement. I think she can turn the tables on the 2, She's a Cozy Gal, the 3, Liliandra, in the opener from Indiana Grand.
Yeah, I like that. Got a little conditioning out of that first one. Now takes a little class drop, so you combine those two. Some improvement in the second start certainly wouldn't be out of the question. Third race this afternoon, yet another calendar condition claimer. This time the tags are $6,000. These are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. This time they're going to go a mile.
Yes, I like the 5, Leggy Laura, who's stretching out from some sprint races over at Tampa Bay Downs. Of course, the Tampa Bay Downs angle is in play when they come up north. They usually do quite well wherever they're at, especially if they're properly placed, in which Leggy Laura, I think, is. Also, I love the fact that Leggy Laura, we're probably going to have an off surface, 2 for 5 over a wet surface, and you get Fernando de la Cruz, who's the leading jockey right now. A lot of positive attributes to like for the 5, Leggy Laura, 5-2 in the morning line in race 3 from Indiana Grand.
I was going to ask you, as I looked at the percentage, where Fernando de la Cruz was ranked, but you let the cat out of the bag there, and it looks like he's off to as good a start as Indiana as he got off to at Tampa this year.
Yeah, and then last year we started a few weeks earlier, so Fernando didn't get here until like the 3rd week of the season, with Indiana Grand starting after the Kentucky Derby and after Tampa Bay Downs closed. He's been here for the entire time, and I think he has a great shot to be leading jockey this year.
Yeah, and that's nice to see, because he got off to that big start at Tampa, then he had an injury, and just seemed to be slow to get back into gear, so it's nice to see he's up and running now and leading things out at Indiana. All right, the 5th race this afternoon. It is an optional claiming event, $25,000 tags. We have state breds again, and they're going to go 3/4 of a mile. Your thoughts in the 5th?
I want a horse, or in this case, a filly that's going to be on or near the lead when the track is off, especially in sprint races here at Indiana Grand. That's why I like the 2, Couldn't Care Less. We're going from an apprentice jockey, Vanessa Royale, who I don't think ever won a race, and I'm pretty sure I looked it up about a week ago, to Marcelino Pedrosa Jr. So I think this is a big difference in jockeys. Coming off the long layoff, but I have speed, dropping down from maiden special weight into this maiden optional claiming. The 2, Couldn't Care Less. Put the horse on the front end and try and hold on. 5-2 in the morning line, race 5, my pick. The 2, Couldn't Care Less.
And there's also an angle in here. I know a lot of people like this is a 4-year-old against mostly 3-year-olds. There's a couple other 4-year-olds in there, but most of this field is 3-year-olds. Couldn't Care Less is one of the 4-year-olds in the field. And as I say, I know a lot of people like that angle. All right, the 6th race today. Always a salty condition. A starter allowance at the $10,000 level. These are 3-year-olds and up. They'll go a mile.
This is part of the Don K. Starter Series at Indiana Grand. It looks like it's a showdown of the 4 Hazards of Love and the 1 Pedrolino. Hazards of Love, I've had the pleasure of actually calling both of their last races, even at Churchill Downs. I was filling in there. So I've gotten up close and been able to see these horses in person. Pedrolino, I think, didn't do that badly going at 7 furlongs in a starter allowance race. I think he gets a good trip in here. Hazards of Love had, I thought, every chance last time and lost to the Hooched Express from the Asmussen barn. Hazards of Love defeated Pedrolino 2 starts back. They both like off surfaces. I think you're going to get a better price for the 1 Pedrolino over the 4 Hazards of Love. The Amos horses, when they look, they seem to get that each and every time, and for good reason. He's hitting at about 48%. So therefore, I think the value is definitely with the 1 Pedrolino. I think will make it a lot more competitive of a race than he did when he lost to Hazards of Love on May 1st over at Churchill Downs going a mile.
And certainly Asmussen does very well with these claims that he then finds crafty spots for an allowance company. He and his assistant had that horse Golden Hair a few years ago that they claimed, and then they were running those in, I think, 5 starters, and they ripped off a string of wins with that horse. That was very, very impressive. So he plays the game in a crafty manner, and Steve not only trains but also owns Pedrolino, so that's kind of interesting. Bill, let's ask you, first of all, obviously, Belmont Park did a great business on Belmont Stakes Day. That was unquestionable. But I've been reading about various venues around the country since then. It seems like everybody had a big day. What were things like Saturday out at Indiana?
Well, I was at Churchill Downs that day. Now, everyone told me they had a huge on-track crowd. We had some promotions where we gave away 3 $1,000 win bets, and somebody picked a totalist and cashed in quite well. on that promotion. But Churchill Downs had a big crowd as well. Everyone was all excited, but lo and behold, and we'll have to wait another year.
Yeah, and give me some of your thoughts on the Belmont Stakes. There's been some criticism of Victor Espinoza. I said earlier, seems like reading over the past couple of days, it's about 50-50 criticism and folks who are perfectly fine with the ride he got. I think we had Jeremy Plonk on a little earlier, and he said, you just don't know what that grab quarter could have meant to him as well. Obviously, that had to have some kind of effect. But what were your thoughts on the Belmont?
Yeah, everyone's seen the pictures. If you haven't, the bloody hoof, if you will, getting stepped on, but stuff happens in horse racing all the time like that. It seemed the California Chrome seemed a little almost too relaxed going to the gate. It was almost like, what's going on here? Espinoza's ride, I don't really have a problem. I guess it's just the way how California Chrome was ridden in the Derby as well as the Preakness, where he got the horse to the outside. Here he was along the inside, but the Belmont's such a long race. Everyone, says you got to wait. He did wait. He got beat, about a couple lengths or so for the Triple Crown. Obviously wasn't even close to his best race. It's horse racing. It's a tough grind, the Triple Crown. Whether or not you got to space the races farther apart, I'm not for it. If they do it, I hope it's like another week and not trying to make it anything, it's spread out over quite a few or over like 2 months or something like that, because I think it would make it more difficult when you get horses there. You'll get more tonalists, like from the Fletchers and the Asmussens and all the big barns will be pointing towards that race. And I think it'll actually make it more difficult, the Triple Crown, to win than less difficult if you space the races farther apart.
I'm exactly with you, and I have said this whole notion of spacing it out. I think, the racing industry first has to define why they want to do it. If the game plan is to make the Triple Crown easier, I'm totally against it. If the game plan is to make the racing better, okay. I just don't know whether that'll happen, but I totally agree with you. If they stretch it out, if their game plan is to make it easier, it's 180 degrees away from where it'll be, because I think now the Preakness and the Belmont both get tougher.
And the one race that would probably benefit if it does get spaced, an extra week between the Derby and the Preakness would probably be the Preakness, just because that's been the one historically that has had the shortest fields.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that would then, I think, make that race tougher. And that traditionally, for these past few horses that have had the near misses, I think has been the easy square for them among the three. And I'm totally against, I've talked about it on the show a couple of times already earlier, reading some of the comments from mainstream sports people who were agreeing with Steve Coburn, saying, it should only be horses that have raced in the Kentucky Derby that move on to the Preakness and Belmont. I think they totally misunderstand the sport.
Yeah, they definitely do. You nominate for the series, but it doesn't mean you have to. It's clear you don't have to run in all three races. If you want restricted races, go run in California bred stakes races if you want a restricted type of race.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's been interesting. It's been an interesting series. I think the horses attracted attention. The 3 weeks leading into the Belmont, there was great mainstream media coverage. I think that was validated by the crowd at Belmont. And as you say, other venues like Indiana and Churchill Downs, and the television ratings, which were phenomenal as well. The most watched show of the week. So I think racing comes out of it for the better. We have to wait another year, but there is a silver lining. So we'll hope that we drew some new fans and raised some awareness for the sport. But Bill, as always, we appreciate the visit. You're on the rotation, so we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Good luck this afternoon, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, Seth.
Bill Downs from Indiana Grand Racing. That's going to bring us close to the end of the show. We still have a couple of minutes left, and I still have some notes that I didn't get to at the top of the show. One of those being, again, going back to this whole notion of changing things up. I said at the top of the show that yesterday I brought in the charts from the 3 last Triple Crown winners, and the fields were smaller. Well, just to give you an idea, that the length of the races, et cetera, plays into it. But this was a competitive Belmont Stakes field, and much larger than Triple Crown horses typically face. Going back, there was a New York Times article that went back and looked at the Triple Crown winners and the fields they faced. And going back to Sir Barton in 1919, Count Fleet in 1943, field size was 8 there. Citation, 48, Seattle Slew in 77, Sir Barton and Count Fleet each faced 3, fields of 3. Citation and Seattle Slew were fields of 8. Seattle Slew and Secretariat encountered the largest number of challengers that had run in the Derby. That was 3. So in Seattle Slew's and Secretariat's Belmont, there were only 3 other horses who had run in the Derby. War Admiral faced 2 Derby rivals. Whirlaway, Assault, Citation, only 1 horse in their Belmont had also run in the Kentucky Derby. Sir Barton, Count Fleet, Gallant Fox, and Omaha faced no horses in their Belmont Stakes that had run in the Derby. So, you know, this notion, again, just historically, to go back and look and think about this notion of, oh, you have to run in the Derby to then run in the Preakness. It's just, it's as I say, these are mainstream sports people who just obviously don't understand the sport or the history of the sport itself. All right, that'll bring us to the end of Racing Across America for this Wednesday. Going to wrap things up and remind you that we're here every Monday through Friday from 10 until 11 a.m. Oh, I also wanted to remind you, and if I can get my hands on it fast, and I can, I had some notes because I did want to remind you, I forgot to do it. I was remiss the first couple of days of the week because the handicapping series is coming up this Saturday, and I absolutely want to remind you about that. Capital OTB's monthly handicapping series continues this month on June 14th. That's this Saturday. It is the King of the Hill, and that happens right here at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. Don't forget that the Summer Showdown Tournament is June 20th through the 22nd. It's a bracket-style tournament, $50 entry fee. You can win 2 seats into the Saratoga Challenge, and that those are just a couple of the events coming up the remainder of the month. You see there on your screen. End of the month, June 29th, Andy Serling in town with a $1,500 bankroll. But again, I did want to remind you, this Saturday, the June edition of the Capital OTB Handicapping Series, the King of the Hill, right down here at the Clubhouse Racebook. All right, we'll wrap things up for Racing Across America. A little earlier on the Handicapper Support, Anthony Mormino and I took a look at Delaware and Belmont Park. Hopefully we gave you some good ideas. Cash some tickets this afternoon and enjoy the racing. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.